Sub-Saharan Africa's water systems are in crisis. From the Sahel to South Africa, some 845 million people lack safely managed drinking water, and over 900 million don't have access to safely managed sanitation services. The consequences of this water insecurity are severe. Inadequate water and sanitation services degrade public health, undermine food security, and sap economic growth. The African Union estimates the countries of Sub-Saharan Africa lose a crushing 5% of their GDP annually due to scarce or contaminated water supplies and poor sanitation. And pressures on the continent's strained water systems are mounting. Populations are rising and are increasingly urbanized. Water demands are growing. Water use in Sub-Saharan Africa is climbing more quickly than anywhere else on Earth. Projections suggest that water use will soar 103% by mid-century. Across the region, domestic water needs are anticipated to triple from 2010 to 2050. Water claims from industry and manufacturing are expected to skyrocket up to 700%. And water resources are also shifting. As global temperatures warm, rainfall patterns across the continent have become increasingly irregular. Projections find some areas may experience greater annual precipitation, but much of Sub-Saharan Africa could see average yearly rainfall drop 10 to 20%. Extreme events and water-related disasters are increasing. The frequency of droughts has tripled, and flooding has surged more than tenfold in Sub-Saharan Africa since the 1970s. Droughts dry up surface and groundwater sources, constricting available supplies. Floods can wash away infrastructure and overwhelm drainage systems and sewage systems, compromising service provision and contaminating water sources. And water quality is worsening. Mounting pollution from expanding cities, agriculture, and industry is drastically degrading water quality in Sub-Saharan Africa. Over half the region's population is now exposed to contaminated drinking water. All told, Sub-Saharan Africa is the most water-insecure region in the world. In 2023, a global assessment by the United Nations ranked every country in the region water insecure to critically insecure. Water-secure societies ensure that their populations have reliable access to adequate supplies of safe water to sustain human well-being and socioeconomic development. Ensuring water security in this landscape of increasing demands, shifting pressures, and unpredictable disruptions will require resilient approaches. Resilient water systems not only enable societies and systems to meet communities' growing water needs, but they also help communities anticipate, adapt to, and recover from evolving shocks and stresses. Today, resources are increasingly limited. Many African nations carry substantial debt burdens. Foreign assistance programs have been reduced. Existing initiatives have long tended to focus on large projects in a small number of countries. Today, building resilient water systems in Sub-Saharan Africa will require bolstering the abilities of countries and communities to address these evolving risks and their underlying drivers, integrating policies, and prioritizing effective use of resources. To accomplish this, three capacities must be strengthened. First, absorptive capacities to prevent, mitigate, and withstand stresses to water systems like sudden floods or droughts. Second, adaptive capacities to create diverse capabilities for addressing evolving demands and long-term threats like climate change and pollution. And third, enabling capacities to facilitate decision-making processes capable of understanding and addressing risks through collective deliberation and engagement. To realize these resilience capacities, the nations of Sub-Saharan Africa must work to ensure sustainable infrastructure, adequate investment, actionable information, and effective institutions. These are the essential interdependent pillars of resilient water systems. First, infrastructure. Sustainable infrastructure represents the backbone of resilient water systems, extracting, storing, and treating water and delivering it to users. Yet much of Sub-Saharan Africa lacks vital water infrastructure. Available water storage amounts to less than 200 cubic meters per person, far below global averages. And only 5% of Sub-Saharan Africa, agriculture is irrigated. Much infrastructure development, however, struggles under a costly and wasteful cycle of build, neglect, and then rebuild. Ensuring long-term water security requires strengthening capacities and resources to supply and maintain essential water infrastructure. Investment. Building, operating, and maintaining sustainable water service systems demands significant financial resources. The African Ministers' Council on Water calculates that meeting Sub-Saharan Africa's water and sanitation needs requires annual spending of $11.4 billion, triple the amount of current investment. Across the region, financing for the water sector is often deficient, fragmented, and difficult to sustain over time. Few utilities in the region, for example, generate enough revenue to cover their operating costs, much less expand services. Yet reliable and resilient water systems generate tremendous societal and economic benefit. These systems deliver up to $7 in returns for each dollar spent, in the form of employment opportunities, protection from disasters, and public health improvements. Securing these benefits and strengthening societal water resilience requires attracting increased investment for water infrastructure projects and implementing models for sustainable funding, operations, monitoring, and maintenance for reliable service delivery over systems' lifetimes. Information. Managing complex water security risks depends on accurate, timely, and consistent information to guide policymaking, implementation, and evaluation of water systems. Good data on water availability, water quality, and water uses can identify emerging needs and vulnerable populations. Analyses of weather patterns and infrastructure capacities can inform early warning systems for water-related disasters. Much of Sub-Saharan Africa, however, suffers from a comparative lack of detailed and accessible water data. But advances in multiple practices and technologies, such as household surveys and satellite remote sensing, offer significant new opportunities to enhance systematic data collection and fill gaps in areas with sparse in-situ monitoring capacities. Strengthen collaboration among data providers and end users, and defined responsibilities and possibilities and policies for data access and dissemination will also be essential. Institutions. Institutions manage water policy and decision-making. They build and operate infrastructure, collect and analyze information, and mobilize and allocate financial resources. Water governance is a complex process in all countries. In Sub-Saharan Africa, most water systems are managed by a mix of national, subnational, and local government institutions, overseeing public utilities, traditional authorities, or community-based management systems, and private sector actors. But institutions managing watersheds, river basins, or groundwater aquifers do not typically align with the political boundaries of communities, countries, and government departments. Different ministries and authorities can have differing mandates for managing different water uses, for agriculture, energy, or industry, for example. Responsibilities and accountability can be overlapping or unclear or contested, contributing to siloed policies and governance gaps. African decision makers universally identify institutional weaknesses and fragmentation as critical impediments to achieving water security. But deliberative mechanisms, such as water user associations, umbrella authorities, and water commissions, can promote policy coherence. And structured procedures to share knowledge, align priorities, and coordinate information and resource flows can help maximize development effectiveness and impact. Building resilient water systems for Sub-Saharan Africa requires integrated policies, bringing together governance, capacities, and resources. Strengthening coordination among governance policies, stakeholders, and institutions is the key to synergizing investment, information, and infrastructure development to strengthen water security. Water is a unifying thread in the collective good, connecting sources and users, ecologies and economies, and consumers and communities. Strengthening water resilience can reduce vulnerabilities to water risks, sustain livelihoods, secure economic development, and ensure societal well-being. A Malian proverb holds that to quench tomorrow's thirst, communities must construct wells today. It's time for Sub-Saharan Africa to build that resilient future.